The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers. Each life we incarnate into has a divine purpose. For the majority of people on this planet, their purpose has eluded them. We have become so distracted with the struggle to survive that we have forgotten what we are here to do. In alignment with the sacred laws of nature, the ultimate purpose of all existence is to create and evolve. We certainly do not incarnate into life with the intention to destroy. And yet, we have come to live in a very destructive world. As a result, there are many out there who feel lost or adrift, whilst knowing deep down inside that something is very wrong with their reality. Many people wish they could do something of value, anything that is purposeful, instead of having to submit to a system of slavery in order to survive. It is important never to let go of that feeling. That is your soul crying out to you, telling you that your life has value and that you do indeed have a purpose. The most important thing you can do in life is to recognize your purpose, and often that requires a lot of soul searching. Life indeed dishes out some pretty tough challenges, which will either move you closer towards your purpose path, or will give you great training for when you finally realize what it is that you came here to do. But more often than not, the very clues about your life's purpose are hidden in plain sight, woven into the very fabric of our existence. But we are so easily distracted by irrelevant details that don't really matter, that often we miss the very obvious right in front of us. It is because of our willful ignorance of anything that does not fit our preconceived ideas that the truth about the nature of our reality is so readily hidden in plain sight. This is a very deep and personal journey, which has come to be expressed in many aspects throughout my life. This is not just an attempt to retell a bunch of research and pass it off as my own, for I am very grateful and openly acknowledge all the many wonderful people that I have been given the opportunity to work with and to learn from in order to get to the point where I've come to know what I now know. This is a journey I was always destined to go on, and likewise, how I have come to know this information forms as much a part of the story as the information itself.
Your life.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nell V, and this is Dragonology. Tonight is episode 7, and today is the 7th of May 2015. It is 9 p.m. in London and Morocco, 10 p.m. here, where I am in Central Europe, and my home country, South Africa, 4 p.m. in New York, and of course, the next morning in Sydney, 6 a.m. over there. So thank you if you have tuned in. We've covered off quite a lot in the previous 6 episodes of Dragonology, and if you haven't had a chance to have a look at any of them, please do yourself a favor and go back and watch them. They will give you a much deeper understanding into the material that we're about to dive into, but also I think it's difficult to sort of go at this all in a linear context, although we try to, with every episode that we do, keep it as complete within each episode. So if it happens to be your first episode that you're watching, then there is some kind of congruency from start to finish. It's not just a chunk out of a much bigger story. Everything within what we do has cycles within cycles, and we do try to tie together the beginnings to the ends so that people can understand how everything is connected. But for those who don't understand or don't know, or perhaps are new to this material, a brief explanation as to what Dragonology actually is, as defined by myself, because I've coined the term Dragonology as a replacement for the word mythology, which is somewhat misleading and misrepresentative of the genre of study, which deservedly spans a much greater context and is tied together through many common symbolic representatives. But the way I define Dragonology is simply, in the context of which we're dealing with tonight, would be the study of anthropology through symbolic expression rather than through the scholarly indoctrinated textbook expression of the dominant culture. Now, it's important to understand that almost all of history has been written from the point of view of the dominant culture. What we're looking at is we're looking at history through honest expression. In other words, looking at things that are actually there, actually exploring things like artworks, music, stuff that's carved in stone, that's unchangeable, immutable. And this is a lot of what we've explored over the past few weeks. So as I said, if you haven't checked any of the previous episodes out, do go back and have a look. A lot of interesting stuff and a lot of mind-blowing ground has been covered. Now, the purpose of what we're doing and the actual reason for why we're studying Dragonology is because the study of Dragonology proves that our entire culture is in fact rooted in dragon worship. Pretty much all of what we engage in that's auxiliary to us is pretty much an artificial construct. And a large part of that artificial construct can be traced back to the dragon, or more specifically, giving homage to the dragon in the form of energetic homage or worship. Now, I notice, please notice that I've made the word dragon purple, and that's not by accident. We always make anything to do with the dragon purple when we go through the etymology. And the word worship has the OR root, which is the most common root when we're talking about dragon etymology. Now, we've spoken about various elements of culture over the past few weeks, and just want to take you through what I consider a few dots that need to be connected to each other so you kind of understand where we're going with tonight's material, as well as perhaps for those who haven't seen previous episodes, connecting some of the dots together so that you can understand, you know, what words link together. Culture is a mechanism of control. And as I've said, everything that's an artificial construct, everything that's auxiliary to us is pretty much placed upon us for the purpose of control. And that's done through various mechanisms. We've spoken about music, you know, various things there. Orpheus, the god of music, Pan, this pan flute, the muses who give the name to the word music, which is the art of the muses. We've done a lot of this. Frequency, obviously everything is about frequency, energy, vibrational frequency, and music as well comes in different frequencies. And a lot of music, particularly modern day music, contributes towards our cultural identification and programming. Going back in history, we've covered off a lot of art, looked at a hell of a lot of ancient masterpieces and covered off some artists, sculptures, architecture from the ancient worlds, and really delved into that to explore how we've got the dragon influence creeping in through various representations. And of course, art was the precursor to what became modern day media in the form of print work, and then what incarnated into television. And of course, cinema. The Hollywood is just owned by the CIA, the Vatican, and basically it's nothing more than a big propaganda machine designed specifically for the purposes of programming humanity into a specific cultural identity. And then, of course, gaming, gambling, casinos, PlayStations, all that kind of thing also contribute and to a form of programming and mind control. As I've already mentioned, architecture and sculpture are inextricably linked with art, but the secrets of the symbols associated with many of these pieces we've looked at and buildings and amazing masterpieces all over the world have been inculcated and kept as a secret by various organizations such as the Freemasons. And very much a case of when you go back through history, you'll find that literature and being literate and having the skills of reading and writing was relegated to basically the elite and the clergy. And if you want an education sort of before the early 1800s, you get one if you're wealthy. You go to the Jesuits and get a good education there. The Jesuits have always been inextricably linked with education and literature, and pretty much been in control of what literature has been in circulation for the last at least 500 years. So literature obviously leads automatically onto rite, and in rite you've got the writ root, which obviously takes you onto sort of like a rite of passage, or a ritualistic rite. So the writ root is in ritual as well. And with literature inextricably linked with language. Language, a deconstruction of language, looking at the root of language, is etymology. And in etymology, what you do is you deconstruct the symbolic representations to take you to the root of what the actual word means, or perhaps it has a deeper meaning we're not aware of. And why that's important is because it gives you a clear indication of what mythology is really all about. Etymology helps you connect the dots between various things so you can see how they're all interlinked, because we've been educated in very compartmentalized sections, like this happened in this continent, this happened in this year, and that is how history is taught to us in school, and it's pretty misleading. And the way you kind of are able to link it all together, the one common denominator that's pretty prevalent through all histories and ancient cultures and ancient legends, histories and stories, fairy tale, fable, folklore, and fantasy, is in fact the dragon. And we're going to be delving straight into the heart of the beast tonight with some very interesting information that gets into some really cool detail, touches on our home soil as well. So what have we proven with the last 6 episodes that we've been engaged in, and the work that I've been engaged with, is that culture is rooted in with the dragon and with dragon worship. Okay, that is what inextricably has been proven with looking at things that are left over from past histories, things that people carve in stone. I mean, it's not easy to carve marble. You don't see a lot of it around these days. It's a really difficult thing to do and to get right. But yet these dragons and half human, half serpentine beings turn up carved in marble, carved in stone. You know, and it's the things that people find important which find place in their mythology and that they feel is worth preserving to such an extent they'll go to the effort to carve it in marble and stone and represent it that accurately and that skillfully. So the aim of what we are going to be doing today, in the context of what we've been doing for the last 6 episodes, is to demonstrate the control structure in its various levels, okay? To give an explanation of the true function and purpose of the various institutions, and to demonstrate how it all interconnects, and of course to demonstrate that humanity's history freedom, and fate is related to the dragon. And the way we're going to be doing that, the how, is by following the symbols, see how they interconnect and where they show up, and of course, where we end up on this little trail of investigation. So starting with the basics, for those who aren't aware, I don't think there's many people who watch my work who tune in who don't have the basics kind of down, but just in case you don't, let's cover them off. Basically, we are not free. No brainer. We are controlled. Humanity is in a dire state. Half the planet live on less than $2 a day. War is perpetuated purely for the purpose of profit. We are being systematically poisoned, and 1% of the world's population control 90% of the planet's resources. And that is a pretty devastating state of affairs when you consider that it's not good for the 90%, yeah? It really isn't. And we need to become aware of the facts, but not just what is fed to us, really discover the truth for ourselves. And the only way we can do that is by deconstructing everything, looking at the building blocks, what they are, and reconstructing it again, perhaps in a completely new way. And that might even include having to reconstruct our entire language base. So for those of you who are familiar with the work we do here, or that I've been doing with Freedom Central for many years, and some of the subjects cover off on CCN, this sort of diagram will not be in any way new to you. This is the typical, how should we say, pyramid of control that can be understood by pretty much anybody who, has the capacity of literacy, really. And basically, when you start going to this and you start sort of looking at how it's all shaped, we talk about the 1% who sit at the top, the financial elite, okay? All the wealth and resources go at the top. They control us with debt through a monetary system. And of course, at the bottom of this pyramid of control is the people, planet, and all living things, which suffer immensely and perpetually at the hands of people who really just don't give a damn about what they're doing. And this is all reinforced through numerous structures: financial, industrial, military complex, and of course the various religious and spiritual institutions, which we'll get into. So the associated symbols that we need to just be aware of, we've covered off a lot of this in previous episodes, but these are the common ones. And it's the sun, okay? And notice over here the sun with the little straight arrows and the little curvy ones with the face on it. Now, I actually have this image tattooed on my ankle. I had it done when I was 18, pretty much straight after I had my car accident. It's kind of weird that it's one of the most prevalent symbols in the occult mysteries, but nonetheless, there it is. Of course, the all-seeing eye within the triangle, the Trinity and triangle, 3, 6, and 9, of course, all very prevalent and important within occult numerology. And the ever-present serpent, this one in the shape of the Ouroboros eating its tail. So those symbols turn up quite frequently and sometimes in various combinations of each other. Here we've got, for example, the crowned winged dragon with the eye in the middle and what looks like a sword and some kind of worship going on here, perhaps an eagle on the outside. But what potentially also could be, because he has an unwinged dragon, a representation of, say, a yin and yang, male and female, duality. Dragons are often associated with the all-seeing eye simply because of the amazing and uncanny etymological similarities, which, if not through the etymology, then through the actual symbolic allegory, very much are inextricably linked. So, as I say, all-seeing eye very much linked with the dragon, referenced in the Bibles as the Watchers or biblical angels, and that symbolism, of course, is also inextricably linked with the world of dragons. Here are what we could call a representation of the hexagon angels, which are the 6-winged angels, or the seraphim,
notice the halos on them, but typically depicted with eyes in the wings, indicative of the watchers. And the watchers are referenced in the Bible, as I already mentioned, but are also known as the angels, Elohim, or dragons. Now, when you talk about dragons, you're obviously talking about the negative aspect of these things. And when we sometimes talk about the Elohim or the angels, people think of it in a more positive or light aspect, El meaning light. But the ubiquitous duality is inextricably linked with the dragon. And this is the theme that we have to get our head around, because it's something that I'll be covering off a lot more, because it plays into our reality. Now, the all-seeing eye turns up, of course, in the Freemasons logo, various death incarnations of them. And it forms part of the icon of many interesting things and turns up in many interesting places. And it's wherever you see this all-seeing eye in the triangle, even sometimes just surrounded by light, the sun, that's very much what it's representing. You've got to take notice. Okay, what is it saying? Now, you notice here, we've spoken a little bit about Mr. Crowley before, especially when we covered off music and modern day culture, but have a look. And his triangle hat has got this very same as we saw before. Okay, look at that. That's the same motif, pretty much, yeah? So, sun rays in the form of a six-pointed star, hexagram, with sunlight. That's an eye of Horus, and we'll get onto that specifically, an eye of Horus, and a triangle, and of course, pentagram on his book, Interlocking. Aleister Crowley, interesting dude. He was considered an occult master, a ceremonial magician, and called himself the Beast, founder of the cult known as Thelema, and a big proponent of the Order Templar Orientis. Now, Thelema has the THE, which is the the root word. The is the root of theology, and the quite simply means God. Theoi is the plural, meaning gods. Again here, where does it turn up? But in a Catholic church. And I really like this depiction. If any of you have watched my previous Dragonology episodes, we've been through the meaning of columns and spirals and all the architecture bits. And it's really lovely to see this one turning up on a beautiful ionic styled column pillar. But yeah, all-seeing eye, triangle, sun rays, or triangle. And this particular one, all-seeing eyes are commonly found in, on, and around Catholic churches. I misspelled church. Catholic churches, basilicas, and cathedrals. And the one that I've just shown you, this is it's taken a step further back. These are actually photographs I took. This is one I've taken. This is what I've taken. This is this. But it's just different aspects of it. And you step back and you see what all the same things we've spoken about, arches, columns, spirals, all encoded into this, it's a serpentine architecture, locking down the Ophidian vibration. It's all encoded in there. And of course, the dome on the top with the cross over there. That's just, of course, stepping further back from this cathedral. And this is in Leiden in Holland. A very interesting place, Leiden, because it's supposedly the home of the Bilderberg group, who apparently have offices in Leiden University. Now, this is inside this particular Catholic church in Leiden, which I just love this depiction. Have a look at this. What have we got here? This looks like Virgin Mary, but I beg your pardon. We can't really work it out because that's a lily in her hand. So could it be Lilith? Because this could be the Garden of Eden. If this is a reptilian, this looks like a dragon because you've got feet on here and the tail twisting around a tree. Very interesting. Anyway, sun, moon, and what are this over here? I can't really work out. Could this be like the 9 realms, like with Asgard or something, or UFOs? I'm not terribly sure, but this inside a Catholic church, that's my finger over there. I thought that was incredibly interesting, actually, particularly the one that has a kind of architecture that this one has on it. You know, definitely the symbols are everywhere. You know, if any of you are in and around some places where they've got some beautiful old churches, and even some of the new ones. Just go in and check out the architecture and the symbols. It's all there. It's all telling you the same old story. It's all about your domination and control. So reptilian dragon being here. And of course, the most common element of our control being the monetary situation. And it's interesting, yes, again, the all-seeing eye turns up where? But on back of the $1 bill. The capstone floating above the pyramid. Now, this is actually the letter A. Okay, the letter A is modeled on this particular, the alpha is actually a representation of this particular symbol. That's why you have that going down there with the belt across the A. That's what we were taught, how we talked about in school. But the all-seeing eye is commonly found on the back of the $1 bill and many other interesting places. So Aleister Crowley had an Eye of Horus in his particular hat, and the Eye of Horus has this distinguishes it as this particular piece that comes down here. And yeah, this is an Egyptian representation, very interesting. You've got a uraeus on the front end of this one, yeah, a rearing cobra. Now, the all-seeing eye, very well-known symbol of the occult, singular eye, okay? We just spoke about the alpha, right, as this representation here. You can see it there, the A. All these little symbols in this particular cult, some Latin text in there, not even sure what it says, but basically the word occult has a couple of interesting roots in here. First, cult, right, which again brings us back to rite and ritual, but also oculus. The word occult is rooted in the Latin word oculus, and oculus means eye, and that has the kulu root, and kulu, kolu, kola, kula, it's all a specific root. For example, would be the root of column, Columbus, and Dracula. And now we go into some of the the territory that is controversial, but yeah, it's in the public domain. You can go look this stuff up for yourself, guys. I'm not making any of it up. But here we got this sun. Notice the spikes with little curls, little twirls. We've seen this guy before. Yeah, it turns up a lot in occult symbolism. It is the symbol of the Jesuits. The Jesuits is a Catholic order. The full name is known as the Society of Jesus, but it's shortened to Jesuits because it's actually an insulting name given to them because they overuse the word Jesus, and as a result, were given the name Jesuits for the overuse of the word Jesus. But basically, the Jesuit symbol depicts the sun and the acronym IHS. Right, IHS, which basically means Isis, Horus, Seth, or Set. And these guys are Egyptian deities. Let's have a look at some of the representations of them. Isis, beautiful depiction of Isis. This is an old one, this is obviously a more modern depiction, but this is inside temple. Isis depicted with wings, yeah? Here we go, depicted with wings. And you'll notice here, a resting cobra, the J, that is common with the royalty dragon bloodline, this particular symbol. I also want to just bring you to notice the owls in the background, very common with Isis and Mother Goddess figures. And then, of course, over time, the basic primordial deities stayed the same, but they've just taken on different labelings as various empires have been conquered, churches torn down, rebuilt, relabeled, but ultimately it's the same deities under different labeling, different names. So this would be the original sort of representation of Isis, and this is actually an ancient Egyptian carving, and you see she's got the rearing cobra, the uraeus, on the headdress, and so has Horus over here, okay, indicating his Porphyrogenitus, purple born of the dragon bloodline. Interesting depiction. And then obviously a Latin version when they became Christianized, a more Latin version of it. And then I'd say a very much more recent version of Mary and Jesus. Again, notice the halos, always around dragon bloodline, holy people. And of course, Horus, the solar halo, again, depicted in Egyptian art, often surrounded by a urea, a rearing cobra or serpent around the sun. That's a solar disk on top of Horus. So he is a sun god, okay, with the serpent. And we've spoken as well before about how the bird and the snake are inextricably linked through words such as Calambra and Calubra. One actually means dove, a Calubra means serpent, and Calambra means dove. And column in French means dove. So etymologically, the dove, the bird and the serpent are linked, but also symbolically they always seem to turn up together, and particularly noticeable in Egyptian art through the representation of Horus. Then, of course, there's Set, sometimes represented as the god Anubis, the god of Damble, god of judgment. But the story being that Horus was the god of the day and Set was the god of the night. And when the sun set, this is where you get the term sunset. When the sun set, according to Egyptian mythology, Set and Horus were always at war, and at night what happened was Set would beat Horus and the sun would set, and basically they would battle all night and Horus would conquer Set in the morning and the sun would rise again. And this is where you get the story of Jesus, the risen sun. He's actually an incarnation of the old Egyptian sun god. So the whole story of sunrise and sunset is inextricably linked with the stories of Horus and Set from Egyptian mythology. And here's a lovely representation of Horus with the rearing cobras, the uraeus, solar uraeus, just the set of cobras on either side of the solar disk. And here he's got wings. Very interesting depiction. And as already discussed, Horus, much like Isis became Mary, Horus became Jesus. And as religions sort of, I don't know, it's difficult. You can't say religions evolve because there's nothing evolved about religion. Say as they were indoctrinated, taken over, rewritten, all the good stuff taken out, all the nasty stuff left in. These guys were re-represented, reinterpreted, and relabeled, and re-propagandized out to the minds of the masses for the purposes of mass control. But Jesus was, in fact, a sun god, as we've spoken about many times over, and in fact is, just a representation of the solar zodiac. And you can tell that by the fact that he had 12 disciples, very much like these 12 representations in the solar zodiac. And the cross of the zodiac is actually a representation of the Christian cross, okay? And basically the horizontal and vertical cross mark out the solstices and the equinoxes of the zodiac. So basically what this thing is doing is it's a literal or symbolic allegory of the sun's journey around the cosmos through the course of the year. And this just proves more and more again that Jesus is nothing but a solar messiah through the fact that they use a sun cross as the symbol of Christianity. Now, the fact that they use the sun symbol and, of course, the sun god Horus in the Order of the Jesuits is very, very interesting. Okay. And I want to read this out here. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. And this was said by Jesus Christ according to Matthew 7 verse 15 in the King James version of the Bible. And then this is apparently said by the third Jesuit Superior General Francesco Borgio. It says, we came in like lambs and will rule like wolves. We shall be expelled like dogs and return like eagles. Okay. An interesting representation of the dogs, as he's sacrificing a baby, because this is the depth of the depravity to which these guys go to, as we shall demonstrate through some of the material. Okay. Let's have a look at the oath first. I'll pop back in a second. This is the Jesuit oath that they swear upon being inducted into the order. Okay, and they do this with a dagger held at their throat, and upon punishment of death should they break this oath. Okay, now I'll read it out. I don't like reading it, but I will. The Jesuit oath states the following. Let me have a sip of mint tea. I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I shall spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and the wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever the execrable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will use the secret poison cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, and the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do by any agent of the Pope or Superior of the Brother of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. Yeah, nice bunch of people, these Jesuits, crushing babies' heads against the walls, not even sparing the innocent. And I've said this many times, a truly evolved world is one where we protect the weakest and most vulnerable. This is not the kind of world that I wish to live in, but we are controlled by these guys. And this is a very prosaic and crude depiction, but for now, this is kind of how we're going to go with this. Jesuits at the top in purple, because, they uphold the dragon legacy. And they control everybody underneath them. So let's have a look. Of course, the Order of the Illuminati, we've dealt with this plenty, the etymology, the illuminated ones, the light, the sun, it's all in there. The Council of Foreign Relations. Now, the Council of Foreign Relations, basically, how this works is they have got agents in every single government around the world. If a government has a Minister of Foreign Affairs, you can bet your bottom dollar that they are liaising with the Council of Foreign Relations. So every government has a Minister of Foreign Affairs, and it's, for example, I use in South Africa. South Africa once had a Minister of Foreign Affairs, Willem Pitt Botha, but he was also a CIA agent as well. So pretty much anybody who becomes a foreign minister has to be very hooked into the whole control, papal, Jesuit, CIA, Kabbalic system. Otherwise, you're of no function at all to them. They'll probably get rid of you and replace you with someone who is of benefit to them. And then, of course, they need to control the money, so they control the international bankers. And not only do they control all the legitimate business, they control all the illegal and illegitimate business too. Let me explain this to you. The only reason they keep certain businesses illegal is to keep them exclusive to certain people, so that they don't have unnecessary capitalization on lucrative markets. Okay, that's the only reason for keeping things like drugs illegal, when it's pretty much controlled by the very same people who control the people that will arrest you for being in possession of those said drugs. A lot of hypocrisy. So don't ask me to make too much sense of it. This kind of hypocrisy simply doesn't make sense. That's the whole point, is it's not an organic way of being. Anyway, before I get too soapboxy, let's move on. Of course, they control the Club of Rome, which in turn controls things like the international criminal courts, the environmentalist lobbies, the various groups such as the World Wildlife Foundation, etc., all linked into the Club of Rome, all work together and all very bad people. Opus Dei is a fraternal order within the Roman Catholic Church, quite extreme. These monks actually flog themselves and cause themselves pain to remind themselves of their obligation to this order. A less extreme version of a secret society, of course, being the Freemasons, inextricably linked and controlled by the Jesuits and to the Jesuits, irrespective of what they say. Lower Masons have no idea what's going on higher up. And of course, we've got the New Age movement, and this is where you've got all this wonderful ascended masters bullshit coming in, all falls under here, but ultimately controlled. Saint Germain was actually from the dragon bloodline, and his spirit is still around and running archons of angels and ascended masters from the other realms, and they're interacting with people under the guise of the New Age movement, causing a lot of havoc for people. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the people that the Jesuits control. They control all the night orders without exception, including the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, isn't that interesting? Okay, now these guys used to burn black people, yeah, in America, big white pointy hats and burn crosses and, you know, all sorts of things. In fact, the Ku Klux Klan invented the word picnic, because picnic was terrible what they do. They get all their families together to, you know, picnic baskets, sit around, and then they go and pick up, sorry for the offensive words, niggers or Negroes. This is where the word picnic comes from, because they pick up a nick, or nick is a derogatory word, dismissive word was where the word nigger or Negro actually evolved out of. And yeah, that's where the word picnic comes from. And basically, it was when they used to pick up black people and burn them on crosses and lynch them and all sorts of things for fun. Very racist bunch, this Catholic Church and the Jesuits. Freemasonry, we've covered off, Opus Dei. And then, of course, this is where people start to go, ooh, controversial, because they also control all of Islam. The Roman Catholic Church invented the Islamic faith, and Prophet Muhammad was in fact married to a Roman Catholic nun who was, I think, 20 years older than he was. But nonetheless, she guided him and turned him into who he was. But basically, they control the Islamic faith, as well as all the Islamic secret societies, all the little secret societies. Supposedly, all the religions at war with each other, no, they're all working together at the very top to continue this separation and division and the wars. You know, it's all orchestrated. And of course, the Islamic secret societies is not the only controversial one that's controlled by the Jesuits. People tell us that the Zionists control the Jesuits. No, no. The Zionists are papal court Jews, Judenhofen or Hofen-Juden, which are court Jews. They answer to the Pope. Okay, why do you think the Pope wears a yarmulke sometimes when he's not wearing a mitre? It's because the Roman Catholic Church does control the Jewish faith, just like it controls all faiths. It controls the secret society of the assassins. So if you hear something labeled as an assassination, you know it's been ordered by the Vatican. Assassination, anything given the word, a term assassination, okay, is a special Roman Catholic Church, Vatican, Jesuit ordered killing by a highly initiated person who will never get charged with the crime of murder because they have been given the license to kill. These Jesuits control the secret societies, but also intelligence agencies. MI5, James Bond, who is what? An assassin with a license to kill. So you see where we're going with this, okay? Jesuits control all fraternal orders, including the Skull and Bones, and they control all fraternal orders, and in so doing control all the universities, well, most of them, most educational institutions, and the very good ones, of course, all have fraternities on campus. And then, of course, as we already mentioned, the Mafia, or the Mafia Commission, known as the Mob, commissioned by the Vatican or the Pope, and blessed and protected by the Vatican and the Pope. And in fact, the storyline of the mob is played out in Hollywood. They get away with so much, murder, trafficking of drugs. In fact, it's the mob that get the drugs around the world. Yeah. And then, of course, the lower level drug dealers. You've got to have the high level ones who traffic it from port to port. But the ones that distribute it on land, from pub to pub, bar to bar, rave to rave, festival to festival, these are the Hell's Angels. So the organized drug trade is pretty much linked up right the way through, all the way to the top, to the Vatican and the Jesuits, and distributed through the Mafia Commission and the Hell's Angels. And then, of course, the Jesuits control all major cults, including Satanism. And now, the Superior General of the Jesuits, also known as the Black Pope, is far more powerful than the Pope whom we know, who is in fact just a puppet, nothing more than a puppet for a corrupt institution based on, over the years, been involved in some horrendous things, apart from protecting pedophiles and encouraging the practice of child buggery, the massive deaths and inquisitions that have been condoned in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Vatican, in the name of Christ. It's, massive civilizations wiped out. Indigenous populations, etc. Anyway, so let's read through this. The world is so diabolically evil. Meet the man that plans it that way. The Black Pope, Adolfo Nicolas Pachon, is the most powerful man in the world and behind the plans for a new world order. He is the Superior General of the Jesuits, or the Black Pope. Adolfo Nicolas and his 6 generals control the White Pope and the Vatican and the entire list below, which are, as we've already mentioned, and we'll go through some of them again just to reinforce this: the Illuminati, Zionists, Global Elite, the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, Bilderberg Group, which is based in Leiden, which we looked at earlier, the Freemasons, Council of 300, which is businesses and elite families, the United Nations, and the Council on Trent. The Jesuits control the Knights Templar, the Knights of Columbus, and the Knights of Malta, and all other Knight orders. They control the CIA, FBI, NSA, MI5, MI6, Mossad. When it was the KGB, they controlled that too. And every intelligence agency in the world are Masonic and controlled by the Jesuits. The Jesuits have infiltrated most governments and leaders, including Obama, making them puppets to carry out Jesuit orders. And we covered off Disney a lot in previous Dragonology episodes, and I just couldn't help sneaking this little guy in when I was doing the research. I came across this. Why would Disney, employ a Jesuit academic to their board of directors? It's just curious. It doesn't make any sense to do. I mean, it's a bit of a killjoy, really. But I want to read through this article because there's some very interesting pieces in here, and interesting points in here, which really are worth revisiting. So, Washington. The Reverend Leo O'Donovan just completed his 6th year as president of Georgetown University. So, what's he going to do now? Basically, he's going to Walt Disney. O'Donovan, a Jesuit priest who leads the nation's oldest Catholic university, was elected in June to a 2-year term on the Walt Disney Company's board of directors. At the time, Walt Disney's products and corporate policies were drawing a lot of scrutiny from religious groups. And that's bullshit, by the way. That's not the reason why they've recruited this guy is because, he ran the oldest Catholic university. Now he's going to go run the biggest sort of production company. It's all about controlling the propaganda, control the education, control the media. The announcement of O'Donovan's appointment came soon after the Southern Baptist Convention, the country's largest Protestant church organization, passed a resolution calling for the boycott of Walt Disney theme parks, movies, and merchandise. Well done, by the way, to those Protestant churches. The group censored the company for granting benefits to partners of gay employees and hosting gay and lesbian theme nights. Again, this is just nonsense. Okay, that's not the real reason. Its leaders say the group is worried that Disney's the world's most recognized producer of families. And there it is. Disney is the world's most recognized producer of family entertainment, and it's now got a Jesuit sitting on its board of directors. Probably had them before. Most of the producers and stuff in Hollywood are controlled by Jesuits anyway. So basically, it's claiming that it's veered away from family values. All right. So the world's most recognized producer of family entertainment has veered away from emphasizing traditional family values, and this is why they claim they've brought this Jesuit priest in. O'Donovan said he wholeheartedly disagrees with the assessment of Disney. Of course, if I thought Disney were changing direction in any substantial way, I would, of course, have questions I would raise, he said. That's bullshit, by the way. I have a responsibility to offer a good advice on the moral implications of some of the company's productions, but I don't think I'll be the only one doing that. So why is he joining Disney's board of directors? Good question. Asked again. It doesn't make sense. Even to a mainstream media journalist, they've asked this question twice. This is the opportunity to influence a major American company that has tried to produce entertainment that is sustaining and enriching to family life. No, it's not. It's destructive of family life. The Baptist resolution is the only one example of a number of conflicts in recent years between Disney and Christian groups. Last year, Catholics lambasted the company and its subsidiary Miramax Films for contributing to the British film Priest, which is a sympathetic portrayal of a homosexual priest. Now, Miramax Film is actually owned by a guy called Harvey Weinstein, and I met his legal representative once, actually. Disney has also caught some heat in October when it revealed that the director of its film Powder was, in fact, a convicted child molester. Well, I thought that was kind of had to be on your CV to be part of the movie industry. Pedophilia is Hollywood's dirty little secret after all. Okay, so we get it. A lot of eyebrows went up in the Catholic community about O'Donovan's appointment, but as we know, there's a lot of reason. He's an agent and he's controlling the propaganda. Okay, so we talk about the Jesuits and what else they control. They control, of course, all the night organizations. And so I'm going to, for this particular the purpose of this Dragonology episode, focus specifically on the Knights of Malta. They've got various names, and I'll take you through them. The knightly nomenclature, that's the right word, knightly nomenclature, the members of the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. Okay, they were known as the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem. All right, because what happened was the Roman Catholic Church basically invaded Jerusalem, killed off all the Jews, took it over, and basically secured the city. And then these 9 knights who basically came and excavated the roots. I will go into that, but anyway, they came and excavated Solomon's temple, and that's why they called sometimes the Knights of Solomon as well. And also known, commonly called the Knights of St. John, and we'll go into that, or the Hospitaliers, which is where the word hospital comes from, because the Red Cross obviously came from them as well. Also known as the Knights of Rhodes, and later still the Knights of Malta. All right, so those are all the various names, and we'll take you through the various allegorical indications of that. Of course, the Maltese cross, you've got to have a look at every single symbol that's associated with these guys. You see it here in the background, the Maltese cross. And basically, this cross is intimating, because it's not straight, that there was a circle here. It's reaching out to want to touch each other, the ends there. That's what it's intimating. Is this actually is meant to be a circle. So it's meant to be a solar cross. Okay, we'll show you how that looks. But what it has done over the years is it's evolved into this, and that's become the Maltese cross. But it originally started off like this. In fact, the crosses on Christopher Columbus's ships look very much like this, as did the Knights Templar crosses. Okay. The Knights of the Maltese Cross by Edith Simon, written in 1961. This is what she has to say about them. The Grand Council and Sovereign Military Order of Malta has headquarters in Rome. These Knights of the Papal Caesar control the banking, industry, and military-industrial complexes of the world. They oversee Chase Manhattan Bank with branches in Moscow and New York. They rule the international intelligence community, the KGB in the East, and the CIA in the West. Okay, so in England, and I lived there, I remember always seeing St. John's ambulance services all over the show. And of course, it's got this cross on it because hospitals, St. John's Ambulance, Hospitalia, they all use the same symbols and they all come from the same thing. So St. John's Ambulance is the name of the ambulance service in England. And of course, this is the Red Hospital Cross, okay, that we've come to know. Hospitalia, obviously giving the name to hospital. And of course, the Swiss flag has been made historically neutral. Switzerland never goes to war, and that's quite convenient because Switzerland is actually where the Vatican's banks are stored, the Bank of International Settlements and all that, based in Switzerland. We've spoken about Basel and the Basilisk before, and all ties into this as well. And of course, we're showing you here how the Sun Cross has evolved. The Maltese Cross in an incarnation of it initially came from this, which would have been the horizontal and vertical cross down the center of the circle, which would have been represented. This is a zodiac cross, typically, which evolved into, controversially, the swastika. Okay. In fact, you can find this in some of my Blavatsky books, which published in this 1909. I think the particular book was republished with this symbol in, and that's way before Hitler. So the swastika was known long before Hitler. It's not something he made up. It goes way back, a symbol of the ancient world, but it is in fact, as we say, just a version of this, okay, and evolved into that. And of course, that's provable by the fact that you find these crosses, these Knights crosses turning up on the Nazi flags, which have the red, black, and white death head colors. Here we go, red, black, and white death head colors on the medals, which actually, look here, we've got this cross turning up again with the swastika in the middle. Yeah. Adolf Hitler. Let's have a look. See the cross over here? He's on his lapel because he was doing exactly what was required of him by his Jesuit masters in the Vatican. There we go. It's circled for you. You can see it. And of course, we're going to look here at who else, Knights of Malta. Heinrich Himmler. He was a Knight of Malta. Notice the skull and crossbones because he was the guy who ran the SS, which is the secret elite army of the Nazis that all wore black uniforms. And of course, Mayor Amschel Rothschild, famous for saying, "Give me control of a country's money and I care not who makes its laws." So interesting people who are Knights of Malta, yeah? And you can see here his crosses, his various crosses that he's wearing. William J. Casey, who said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." And this guy was the director of the CIA. And yeah, not a nice guy at all. But basically hugely responsible for And he also said that every major media company in America is controlled by the CIA, all of them. Okay. Edgar J. Hoover. He was also a Knight of Malta. This is him with his Shriner's cap on, because he was also a very high-ranking Freemason. Very strange dude. Cross-dresser, homosexual. And in fact, this is a book written about him back in the 1960s. Look at the knight in the background. Interesting, called Modern Knight Errant, okay, because he was a knight. And of course, Queen Elizabeth II is herself a member of the Knights of Malta. She is what's considered to be a Dame of Malta. Here she is in all her regalia, and she likes to hang out with people who are also Knights of Malta, like Nelson Mandela over here, who is in fact a Knight of Malta. Here's a picture of him much younger, and of course when he's a bit older in his regalia, his various knights' cloaks that he's worn over the years. And this is a South African stamp, postal stamp, 2 rand, about 20 euro cents worth of a stamp, and shows Mr. Mandela in his Knight of Malta uniform. They don't even hide it. Here he is shaking hands with that other Jesuit puppet, Desmond Tutu, who I have actually met up in person and done a piece on. And of course, Nelson Mandela's successor, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, basically got through his presidency on cocaine and alcohol, and basically needed a saline drip every morning when he woke up. That's how you go about living with your conscience when you're continually screwing over the people you're supposed to be helping. Now, we've seen this picture before. We've dealt with it in previous Dragonology episodes, but we're going to be going on to who St. John was and the Knights of St. John, why it's such an important order, the Knights of Malta, Knights of St. John. Now, we've spoken about Grail mythology quite a bit as well over the course of the past Dragonology episodes, but turning up in the stories of St. John, you've got a Grail, again, normally with red wine, with a serpent on it, okay, depicting the royal dragon bloodline. St. John, or John the Baptist, was of the royal dragon bloodline, as depicted here by the fact that he's got a halo. That's always the obvious depiction, okay? Normally around angels as well. Why? Because they've got wings. Anguiem are dragons. So you see little serpents coming out of this cup. 2 depictions of St. John, okay, very commonly depicted. Okay. So knights practice Johannism, okay? Knights practice a form of, well, cultism called Johannism, and that's where the Knights of St. John get their name. It's from Johann, John, okay? Not the Knights of St. John practice Johannism. The Templars founder Hugh de Payens came into contact with the Johannites, who claimed uninterrupted succession of the pontifical power of Christ through St. John. Supposedly, John's 60th successor, Theoclet, instigated Sir Hewins into the secret mysteries of the sect. Now, notice Theoclet, T-H-E, okay? Serpent root word for God. And eventually designated him as the successor of the secret priesthood. Johannism was therefore the secret religions practiced by the Templars, Knights, and the Knights of St. John. In occultism, Catholicism is inverted. Okay, now you'll often notice in Catholic cathedrals and churches, they have black and white tessellated floors and tiles, because what they're trying to tell you is everything is inverted. Black is white and white is black, okay? So in occultism, which is the hidden Catholic doctrine, the outward doctrine of Catholicism pretends to be about light, where the secret knowledge, the occultism, is about Johannism and is about darkness. The outward Catholic doctrine, supposedly the patron saint is St. Peter, when the secret knowledge is that it's actually Jupiter or Lucifer. The Alfred doctrine uses the IHS, and most people don't even know what that is, but the secret knowledge, they know what this particular acronym means, and it references the pagan gods of Isis, Horus, and Set. And yeah. So now we go on to some interesting territory here, because we start to look at where the word John came from. So John evolved from Johann, as we spoke about, Johannism, which came from Johannes. Okay, if you go to the Roman Catholic Church here in Holland, in Amsterdam, it actually has a Saint Johannes in this particular spelling. Okay, and this particular spelling of Saint Johannes basically made it. Hello, Kitty. My cat coming to join me. Pardon me, everybody. Let me get her cozy in here. Hello, darling. Basically, Johannes evolved into what became Ioannes, because the J wasn't around and actually didn't exist in some of the older languages. So it's Ioannes. Where have we heard this one before? Okay. Ioannes was the name given to the Babylonian writer Berossos in the 3rd century BC, to a mystical being who taught mankind wisdom. Now, the word wisdom coming up again. Okay. Berossos, I beg your pardon, Berossos describes Ioannes as having the body of a fish, but underneath the figure of a man. So again, that shape-shifting, mermaid, dragon quality. Ioannes is described as dwelling in the Persian Gulf and rising out of the waters in the daytime, and furnishing mankind with instructions in writing, the arts, and various sciences. Okay, we spoke about this before. Language, writing, and arts is rooted with the dragon. Ioannes and the Semitic god Dagon were considered to be identical. We've covered off Dagon as well. Dagon basically is the one who wore the hat, which is now worn by the Pope, which is the mitre, the fish hat. I'd like to talk a little bit about a gentleman by the name of Manly Palmer Hall. Very interesting man. Phenomenal man, actually, and he was very well versed in the teachings of the mysteries. In fact, I'll read you a little bit about him, because we're going to I've actually gone through one of his lectures and transcribed them so that I could read it back, parts of it to you, because it's very important to hear what he had to say about this particular god, Ioannes, okay? And to understand why his perspective is so important, I want to tell you a little bit about him. First off, Manly Palmer Hall was a Canadian-born author and mystic. He is perhaps most famous for his works, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, which is an encyclopedia outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolic philosophy, which is widely regarded as his opus magnum, and which he published when he was only 27 years of age. Okay, he has been widely recognized as a leading scholar in the field of religion, mythology, mysticism, and the occult. In 1934, Hall founded the Philosophical Research Society, PRS, in Los Angeles, California, dedicated to an idealistic approach to the solution of human problems. The PRS claimed to be a non-sectarian, non-ecclesiastical, and entirely free from educational, politics, and church control. And the Society's programs stress the need for an integration of philosophy, religion, and science into one system of instruction. The PRS Library, a public facility devoted to the source of materials in obscure fields, has many rare and scarce items now impossible to obtain anywhere else. In 1973, almost 47 years after the writing of The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Hall was recognized as a 33rd degree Mason, having never actually gone through a Masonic initiations of any other kind. which is the highest honour conferred by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, and the ceremony was held at the PRS on December 8th, despite the fact that he had never actually engaged in any masonry craft. And that's quite unique. But that's because the Freemasons recognized how skilled this man was. Okay, and people give Manly Palmer Hall a hard time because he was a Freemason, but more than that, he was a scholar and a teacher, and a great one at that. In his over 70-year career, Hall delivered approximately 8,000 lectures in the United States and abroad, and authored over 150 books and essays, and wrote countless magazines and articles. Furthermore, when he died, he bequeathed his entire collection to Jordan Maxwell, who has gone on to go through all of Palmer Manly Hall's stuff and put out a lot of research, and it's largely based on Manly Palmer Hall's work. But what I want to show you here, and why I put this here, is we've been covering off a lot of the flat earth stuff recently on Conscious Consumer Network. This is the cover of Manly Hall's book, The Secret Teaching of All Ages. I'm not sure which edition, but I want to point out the symbolism here again. Okay, the serpent from above, the serpent below, the dualism, the good and the evil. And then the serpent going round, eating its tail, the Ouroboros. Okay, and look what we have here, the flat earth. This is Asgard, okay, the tree of life coming out the top. And what would be the Antarctic, the circle of ice around the flat earth with the dome over the top. Interesting that, isn't it? And of course, the descent into the underworld. So this is what Manly Palmer Hall had to say, and this is directly quoted from his voice speaking. I've actually gone through his old lectures. We are told by Plato and several other historians of our time that various agencies, various merchants, explorers from Atlantis visited other lands. Among those who visited other lands were the priests of the Atlanteans, those who visited the golden serpent, the great golden serpent. Serpent worship is one of the oldest religions in the world. Now, these various missionaries, shall we say, went to primitive people as we send missionaries today to underprivileged or gradually evolving groups. And these missionaries set up various institutions in the different parts of the empire, the parts that were not actually destroyed by the destruction of the Atlantean centerland. Now, it seems to me, and I realize this is hypothetical, but it seems to me that this explains a series of legends and myths which are of interest. We are told, for example, that the people of Chaldea and Babylonia were very primitive. They had not even yet discovered the use of fire. They did not know how to cook food. They did not know how to keep records. They did not know medical knowledge. They had no law to live by and no governments except for tribal communes. And in the midst of all these times, while they were living among the shores of the sea, something strange happened. A being came out of the sea. This being, who they called Oannes, had the body of a fish and the head of a human being. And he wore on his head the head of a fish on, he wore on his head the head of a fish on end. And if you see the old pictures, you realize that his hat is what we call today a mitre, which practically exactly the same shape as a fish's head. And you'll find it here on top of the Pope. Yeah? This is Manly Palmer Hall here. We carry on with the lecture he gave where he says, and this man who came out of the sea, he had scales. He carried symbols, perhaps a cross, with him. And he came to these people and he taught them. He taught them. He gave them a written language. He gave them knowledge of agriculture. He taught them astronomy and the mysteries of the stars. He helped them to build a permanent government, introduced them to the mysteries of architecture and the building of cities. And he also taught them the ways of the heavens and the mysteries of the gods. And he taught them to live in obedience. And he told them in due time he would return. And then he went back to the sea, promising to come back one of these days, sometime in the future. And then he walked out into the sea and disappeared. So they waited, and they kept his laws, and they kept his rules for years, but he never came back. Now, the opposite side of the world, something else was happening. The people of Central America were living in the very same primitive state. Some of them were cannibals. They had no homes except for rude huts. They had no instruments other than cups cut from stone. They did not know how to cook their food. They had no written language and no way to keep their records or their history. No knowledge of any of these things. And while they lived in this primitive condition, a strange thing happened. An old man came to them riding on the back of serpents, and he came to the shore, and he was welcomed by them, these people. And his name is preserved in 3 great languages of the central cultures of the period and time and place. To the Aztecs, he was Kukulkan. To the ones who lived around the Palenque, he was Votan. And to the Mayans, he was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. And this man came from the sea with a bonnet of wonderful plumes, almost like wings. And on his breast, he carried a cross. He came to them. They received him with regard and esteem. And he taught them all these beings that Oannes had, I beg your pardon, Alanis is actually meant to be Oannes. And he taught them all these beings that Oannes had taught, what Oannes had taught the Chaldeans. He helped them to establish a permanent way of life. He gave them beginnings of written language, the only written language in the Western Hemisphere. He gave them good government, and he said, "Now I'll go away, but keep the rules I have given you. In due time I will return and claim the empire. But in the meantime, obey the principles I have taught." This being went to the sea, and as he stood there, he said to the people that had assembled that a very bad power was coming forth from the south to destroy the empire. Then there are 2 accounts of what happened to him. One says that he called to the sea and a raft of serpents returned. The other explanation is that he was transfigured, shapeshifted, and rose to become immortalized and deified in the planet Venus. He said, "I will come back," but never came. The same story exists in China. In China, the Reformation and Restoration was a result of a mysterious being who came out of a fish's mouth and rising out of the sea, taught them the secrets of life. In India, Vishnu, in his first incarnation, is born from the fish's mouth. The same story exists in China. We can dogmatize this and what it means, but certainly at some remote period, around 10,000 years ago, the same doctrines and the same concepts and the same beliefs reached all parts of the world. And we still, and are still reserved and preserved in mythologies of all cultures. The legends and allegories of ancient cultures and ancient peoples were recognized as the ultimate source of civilization. We can't dogmatize what this means, but certainly at a remote period around 10,000 years ago, the same doctrines and concepts and beliefs reached all parts of the world and are still reserved and preserved in all mythologies, legends, and allegories of ancient peoples, and were recognized as the ultimate source of civilization. So moving on to my homeland now, Dr. Crainer Mutwa, Zulu Sangoma Sanusi, the official keeper of the real history of Africa, okay? We're going to be looking at some of what he has had to say about this from a completely different perspective, and taking into account what Manly Palmer Hall had to say about everything. You know, we need to have a look at as well, compare that, because Manly Palmer Hall is just such a great scholar. So what you got to do is you've got to take his work and compare it to, some of the other great scholars of our time. And as I say, Dr. Credo Mutwa, the official keeper of the people of Africa, we've looked at sort of what's happened in Babylonia, what happened in Central and South America. Now let's look at what happened in Africa way back when, the stuff they don't put into school textbooks. So this is also directly quoting Dr. Credo Mutwa. Doesn't it amaze you that when the Native Americans saw the cross on the sails of Christopher Columbus's ships, they recognized it as a sacred object? Exactly the same thing happened in South Africa. Our people were made familiar with the cross long before the white man set foot in Africa. When our people saw this cross, this time brought by missionaries, they recognized it as a sacred object. In other words, our people were prepared, mind-controlled, long beforehand to recognize certain Christianic and Judaic symbols as holy. When our people saw these symbols in the hands of the colonies later, they knew what they were. This is why Africans accepted and protected Christian missionaries, even whilst fighting life and death struggles against white colonialism. How is it that a man would accept the religion of an invader whilst at the same time fighting a life and death battle against the encroachments being made into his native lands? The source of this acceptance was the same. This happened in Africa, and this happened in America. A great fraud is being committed in educational circles in that the educationalists in the ivory towers force our young people to look at colonization of Africa and America as if they were two separate, unrelated occurrences. But certain factors in this colonization were the same in Africa and in America, and they achieved the same results. This is why I have always argued that the international conspiracy began long before colonial times in Africa and America, and the results were the same. The great Zulu king named Shaka was not only a fierce warrior, he was a prophet and widely respected by his people. Shaka welcomes white people into his land in KwaZulu-Natal and allowed the missionaries to operate freely throughout his land. Before Shaka died, he warned his half-brother Dingaan, who was his successor, that he must not attack the white people and that he must allow the missionaries to operate freely. In fact, in the reign of King Dingaan, the two missionaries, Reverend Halstead and Reverend Owen, had a mission station inside Dingaan's village. But the strange thing is, these missionaries were converting our people to Christianity, and they often went out of their way to criticize and undermine the king's authority in the eyes of the converts. In other words, we have an amazing phenomenon here. We have a great king being undermined by the very people he has allowed to preach freely in his lands. Why? No South African scholar has ever been able to answer this question, or has ever asked themselves why. Why were our people so seemingly stupid as to let a foreign religion into their country? When the Belgians colonized the Congo, King Leopold declared that the Congo was to be his personal property. King Leopold's men tortured and murdered several million Congolese people, despite the fact that these people were the slaves and were slaves in their own country and suffered terrible misery and humiliation. Some of them even getting their hands cut off in the rubber plantations if they didn't bring in enough rubber. And they would actually, as far as I remember, one in every so many people would be like brutally murdered, hacked to pieces, just to set an example for the others. And despite all this terrible misery and humiliation, the Congolese people still respected and followed the Christian missionaries, and in fact gained hope from them. In 1907, in the country now known as Namibia, the Germans embarked on a policy of genocide against the people that were known as the Hererals. The Germans tortured and slaughtered so many men and women of this tribe that up until as recently as the late 1940s, the Herero women were so traumatized by what happened that they were not able to have children. But in spite of the hideous genocide committed by General Luther von Troff and the Herero people, despite the horrendous genocide committed by General Lothar von Troffer and the Herero people still cling to the Christian faith. Why? The question is, why? When King Dingaan, king of the Zulus, murdered the white Voortrekker leader, Piet Retief, the act was watched by Reverend Owen and Reverend Halstead from their mission stations, which was built on the hill overlooking Dingaan's great village. Halstead and Owen, who were unharmed by Dingaan, decided to flee from that place, and Dingaan was genuinely upset that his favorite preachers had decided to leave him. King Hletsiuswayo, the warrior king who won the Battle of Indiswane in 1875 or thereabouts, never harmed his missionaries. The king Dinizulu, who succeeded King Hletsiuswayo, was brutally tortured by the English and had great friendship in the Bishop Colenso and his 3 daughters. Even though he had suffered so much at the hands of the English, he never abandoned his Christian friends. The bishop and his family comforted him and depended desperately on the Bible in the darkest hours. The Aboriginals, like the Africans, were deliberately softened up long before they were colonized by the white people. They were mysterious men who often posed as gods, who undermined the will of the Aboriginals to resist the encroachment of the colonialists. Captain Cook, who is the person who was supposed to have discovered Australia and New Zealand, was actually funded and controlled by the Royal Society, which is a Freemasonic society operation in London. I have come across these characters in hoods who have constituted much of the manipulation of our kings and leaders, says Dr. Credo Mutwa. So let's have a look at this cross symbol again in the circle. And it turns up, interestingly enough, on Dr. Credo Mutwa's Necklace of the Mysteries, which, by the way, was stolen in 2010. But this thing is said to be at least 1,000 years old. There's a cross with a circle in it depicted on the hand of the Necklace of the Mysteries, which sits here just, by the way, below what would be a reptilian or dragon-like being with supposedly a golden penis. Who knows what that is? But here is a close-up of it, okay, of this non-human-like alien being. And he has an eye, an all-seeing eye, a symbol that turns up a lot. And here is a circle with a cross in it. And here you've got the depiction of Orion, which is interesting to note. Here we go, some more depictions going on. This reckons that this could be an Illuminati pyramid. There's a hexagram and constellation Orion. Credo Mutwa goes on to say, the Christian missionaries behaved like dictators. They ill-treated our people. They humiliated them and stole huge tracts of land from our people in the name of Jesus Christ. If you go to Durban and you come to a place called Marion Hill, you'll find one of the biggest and oldest mission schools in South Africa. Marion Hill sits upon a huge piece of land which was stolen from the Zulu people by a missionary called Shimlet. Even to this day, the people of Marion Hill will tell you that this man was not only a crook, but a pitiless exploiter of black people. He was a monk, but he was much more than a monk. It was said that this man worshipped not God, not the Virgin Mary, but Satan himself. The missionaries used to employ the tactic of preaching to the so-called gospel to our people. At the same time, they used it to manipulate our people into parting with some of their holiest relics. The missionaries established hospitals in their mission stations, and when an African was brought there, sick and dying, the missionaries used to tell the Africans that as a condition of entering the hospital, he first had to be baptized as a Christian. Also, another condition of entering the hospital and receiving treatment, the sick African had to surrender all the artifacts from his ancestors that had been in his possession, and again, the people were robbed of their heritage. Our people were robbed of scientific equipment. Our people were robbed of irreplaceable artifacts, some of them dating back hundreds of years into the past. When missionaries came to South Africa, they deliberately created a huge wave of animosity between those blacks that they converted and those blacks who resisted the Christian conversion. they created such a divide that they actually broke up huge families. It got worse when Catholics, Protestants, and other religions spread through South Africa. There was deliberate development of conflict of a nature that exists between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland. Black Protestants were forbidden from talking to Black Catholics, and Black Catholics would not even ask the time of day from Black Protestants. And this goes into the old adage, of course, of the game which is being played. In the game of conquer and divide, or divide and conquer, we are merely pawns that keep us busy fighting each other instead of fighting them. And this is how they mind control us. They mind control us through manipulation and propaganda. Okay? And this is what we'll be covering off next week. We'll be going into the propaganda and mind control elements and stuff. But just to give you a bit of a taste of where we're going, what is propaganda? Simply put, propaganda is the manipulation of public opinion. Material which is meant to persuade or change opinion. Though it often varies in form and technique, it always serves the same purpose. And that purpose is for mind control and for control. They control our minds to control us. Propaganda is communication used for the purpose of persuasion. Okay. That brings us to the end of Dragonology episode 7. Dragonology episode 8 airs on the 14th of May 2015 at the same time. As I've just said, we'll be going into the elements of mind control and propaganda. If you have missed any of our previous episodes, feel free to go and download a high-definition version of Dragonology from effiemarket.com. In fact, all the CCN shows are recorded in high definition and uploaded onto effiemarket.com. So if you have missed the show, feel free to pick up a high definition download off effiemarket.com, or you can become a regular pledger. If you download one of the high definition versions of our shows, it's €5 per show, or become a monthly pledger for €10 a month, and you get unlimited access to all the high definition downloads from CCN, which are all available at effiemarket.com. Effie Market is the place where conscious-minded people come and shop, because we've created this marketplace for people to be treated fairly. All of our vendors who are on there get a decent rate, get everything done in terms of ethical percentages. And we've also created this so that we can give people something back with becoming a pledger to free and independent media. Of course, we're still trying to get the Encyclopedia of Dragons project published. So if anybody is interested in donating to that, please do. And you're welcome to go onto our homepage at consciousconsumernetwork.tv and just hit on the big red heart, the donate button, and donate there, or become a monthly pledger, €10 a month, and it goes to supporting free and independent media. And as always, we do support you. We do thank you for supporting free and independent media. And we'd like to wish you a very good evening from us here at Conscious Consumer Network. We will see you next week. My name is Melvi, and it's been great being with you. Thank you very much. Good night.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential, with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform being made available to use at no cost to the broadcaster. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Without it, CCN will simply not be able to function without succumbing to corporate sponsorship and advertising. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.